Hello and welcome to summer, or rather a series of programmes about one particular aspect of summer, and that's food. Here at my home in Suffolk over the next few weeks, what I want to offer you is a whole collection of sunny summer recipes, so that even if the good old British weather isn't all it should be, we can still enjoy together the wonder and colour of summer produce as each part of the season unfolds. Well, here we are in May, which is what I think of as the prelude to summer, with the first wild salmon just in from the sea, the early rosy stalks of young rhubarb, and to start with, the first of the season's fresh asparagus, now with that magic label attached to it, English. The first young stalks of asparagus begin to appear in mid-April if we've had a warm spring, but the official season lasts from the beginning of May to the end of June. The East End of London was once ringed with huge beds of asparagus, or sparrow's grass as they called it then, but now they've migrated further, out to East Anglia, where they grow the superb English variety, smaller than imported asparagus, but with a far more delicate and special flavour. It comes in several grades. The thinnest shoots, called sprue, are best for soups or quiches or other cooked dishes, but for serving on their own, the luscious thicker grades are better, and so well worth a little bit of extra cost. Well, today I want to show you two different ways of cooking asparagus. But first of all, you need to prepare it for cooking. Give it a good wash, because sometimes it's very dusty. And then, before you actually cook it, take each spear of asparagus in both hands and give it a little snap like this, because this end of the asparagus is actually not edible, but it snaps quite naturally at the place where it's very fibrous and not suitable for eating and where it's very tender. If it's a bit untidy like this, you can just use a knife and trim it up and make it tidy. Now, the first way I want to show you of cooking asparagus is steaming it. This seems to be the simple way to do it, and it doesn't take very long. This is a fan steamer. Now, this will fit any size saucepan, and it's perfect for what we need because it'll fit also inside a frying pan. Now, for steaming, you start off with some simmering water in a frying pan, then just slip in the fan steamer, and then add your prepared, trimmed, washed stalks of asparagus. Now, if you wanted to cook a lot of asparagus for a lot of people, then you'd be better off with a deep saucepan, a large deep saucepan with a steamer in the bottom, so you could stack them up in layers. And all we're going to need then is some salt. Then put a lid on and let them simmer gently over the water for between 4 and 6 minutes. After about 4 minutes, test the asparagus with a knife. It should be tender but still retain some bite. Then serve it with this new recipe for foaming hollandaise sauce. Now I'd like to show you another way of cooking asparagus. This time we're going to sauté it in a frying pan. And I always think that asparagus has the most wonderful affinity with both eggs and cheese. And the recipe I want to show you now has actually both of those in it. Now you can serve it, we're going to cook the asparagus in the frying pan in a minute, I'm waiting for it to come up to heat. You can serve it either with a poached egg or with a fried egg. But today we're going to have a little bit of fun and serve it with fried quail's eggs, which is a rather cute way, I think, of serving it. Anyway, my pan's nice and hot now. I've got some thinner asparagus stalks here. They're going to go into the frying pan, and you need roughly 4 ounces per person. As soon as it goes in and hits the heat, turn the heat down, and then just lightly sauté it, moving it around the pan, turning it around until it's tender, and probably about 3-4 minutes altogether. Now, when the asparagus is ready, leave it in the pan so that it'll just keep warm in the heat of the pan. And I'm going to add another ingredient. There's a little bit of oil still in that pan. I'm just going to add a little bit of balsamic vinegar so that you get just a hint of vinaigrette round the asparagus. It sizzles a bit when it goes in, but not to worry about that. Just leave it there and it'll stay hot. And now we'll just deal with the quail eggs. Now, you need to have the pan very hot. Use a different frying pan. Have some oil in it, get it very hot, and I'll just show you how to deal with quail eggs. You can't actually break them into the pan as you would a hen's egg because they're so tiny, the yolks break. So you have to just make a little slit in the egg first. The way I do this is I just take a serrated knife, a nice sharp one, and then just very gently, don't press too hard, just very gently make a little slit like that, just across the shell so that it's easy for you to open it. And then as soon as the oil is hot enough, it looks like that is, in it goes. Quail egg number 1. I've got slits already in here to save time. Quail egg number 2. And quail egg number 3. It was very funny when we went to pick up the eggs from the farm, the quail farm. You know, quails are roughly the size of budgerigars. And apparently they've just all had their babies, and apparently the little babies look like bumblebees running around, which I thought was rather cute. Now they taste the same as hen's eggs, but I just think it makes things a little bit more interesting. Baste the tops as you would if you were frying an egg, and it's a very brief affair. They cook, you know, very, very quickly. They're just about ready now, so I'm going to take the pan off the heat, turn it out, and then you need to have a nice warm plate ready. Put the asparagus onto the plate. There it is. And any little juices that are left in the pan, just tiny little juices there, on top. And then the cheese is going to be Parmesan cheese, but not grated. This is rather nice if you serve it actually with flakes of Parmesan cheese. So I'll just do that now with my potato peeler, just tiny little gentle little flakes of Parmesan. And finally, the quail eggs will join it. There we are, number 1. Number 2, I love the little lacy brown edges when they're fried like this, number 3. And that's sautéed asparagus with quail eggs and Parmesan.
Early summer also means fresh salmon, but these days fresh usually means fresh from the salmon farm and not from the river. It's a sad fact that wild salmon catches are being reduced dramatically due to pollution, indiscriminate netting and low water levels. Yet for me, the flavour of wild salmon is infinitely preferable, even if I can only have it just once a year.
Well, if you manage to get hold of some really good salmon, the nicest way to serve it is cold on a warm summer evening, because then you can be free to enjoy your guests and not be flapping around in the kitchen getting all hot and bothered. So the way to cook cold salmon, I think, the best way to cook it is to bake it in the oven in foil, and it's very, very easy, and you can do it ahead of time, or you can even do it the night before if you want to, if you're working all day. Now you need a large sheet of foil spread out over a baking sheet, and then for 6 people, 6 fresh salmon steaks, and I'm just going to line these up on the foil. I have actually tasted recently some very good farm salmon from Norway, and I think there is progress being made on the farm salmon front, so perhaps we can take a leaf out of their book and get ours much better in the future. Now, some flavouring on there. First of all, some pepper and salt, some seasoning, and then I'm just going to put a little bit of bay leaf on each salmon steak. This is just to give just a hint of fragrance, nothing more than that. And another lovely fragrance with salmon is fresh tarragon, so just a little sprig of tarragon on each salmon steak. These here, by the way, weigh approximately 7 ounces. It's not absolutely vital, 6, 7, sometimes they come up at 8 ounces. There we are. And the tarragon will just give a hint of tarragon flavour. Then a little bit of moisture. Salmon is an oily fish, so you don't need to put butter anywhere near it, which is good, because we're all trying to cut down on our calories. But a little bit of white wine, just a dessert spoonful of white wine on each one, will just give a tiny bit of steam inside while it's baking and keep it beautifully moist. The lovely thing about this recipe is it keeps the salmon beautifully moist. You don't have to worry about it being dry at all. Just fold up the foil. Make a pleat at the top and then just squeeze the ends, and that goes into a preheated oven, gas mark 4 or the equivalents, and the salmon cooks in just 20 minutes. And then when it's cooked, remove it from the oven. Now, if you want to serve it cold on a warm summer's evening, it goes very well with this sauce here, which is an avocado and creme fraiche sauce. Now, you begin this by scraping all the flesh from a large avocado, especially the very green bit next to the skin, because that's good for the colour. And you add a teaspoonful of sherry vinegar, a clove of garlic, and whiz it to a puree in a blender or a food processor. If you don't have either of those, you can actually squash it through a sieve. It doesn't make any difference. And then you get it up to this stage and finally add the creme fraiche. Now, creme fraiche is an ingredient you might not have used yet, but it's a wonderful light alternative to cream. It's actually got a slightly acidic flavour, and this is very, very good for cooking and for sauces, and I think it's gorgeous with summer fruits. And the good news about creme fraiche is that it doesn't have as many calories as double cream or soured cream. Unfortunately, the avocado has quite a few, but we won't say anything about that. What I want to do now is actually show you a piece of foil-baked salmon, because I just want to show you how lovely and juicy it is and how you don't have to worry. You just take it out of the foil and then just slip off the skin round the edge here with the help of a knife if it doesn't come off. The best way to do it is to start from that side to here and then start from that side and bring this one round like that. It should slip off quite easily. And if there's any pieces left, all you've got to do is just sort of slide them off with a knife. Now what I'm going to do is open this piece of salmon here and reveal to you the glory of how lovely and juicy that is. If you cook it in foil, you don't ever have to worry about over-poaching it, over-boiling it. You cook it, give it those timings, it'll always be lovely and juicy like that. So there we are then, foil-baked salmon. And here it is, all ready to serve on a warm summer evening with some nice chilled white wine and maybe some tiny new potatoes and a salad. One thing I want to tell you, though, about the avocado sauce is don't make it too far in advance, definitely not overnight, just a couple of hours before. But because it's so easy to make, it won't be any trouble. You can whiz it up all together in about 5 minutes. Now we've done foil-baked salmon, I want to show you some different ways of wrapping salmon up and cooking it.
For Thai salmon phyllo parcels, you first combine in a mixing bowl 1 tablespoon of fresh chopped coriander, a crushed clove of garlic, a teaspoon of grated ginger, a sliced spring onion and the zest and juice of a lime. Now brush a sheet of phyllo pastry with melted butter, then place another sheet on top and brush again. Place a 5-ounce piece of salmon fillet on the pastry, season, and then spread half the lime and coriander mixture over. Then simply fold the pastry to make a parcel and trim the edges. Make up another parcel in the same way, and then brush them both with a little more melted butter. Bake at gas mark 5 for 20 to 25 minutes until golden. Here's another idea, this time using 5 ounces of couscous. First pour 7 fluid ounces of dry white wine into a saucepan. Whisk in 2 pinches of saffron stamens and some seasoning and bring it up to simmering point. Then pour the hot wine over the couscous, stir and leave it to soak for 15 minutes. Then separate the grains with a knife. Then take 4 seasoned fillets of salmon and dip them first into beaten egg and next into the couscous, patting it all round to make a crust like breadcrumbs. Bake at gas mark 5 for 15 to 20 minutes, and this is excellent served with a tomato and olive vinaigrette and garnished with a sprig of parsley.
One of the things I always really look forward to in the month of May is having some English rhubarb. It seems so silly when English restaurants serve desserts made with imported fruits, when we've got this lovely luscious fruit growing right here in this country. But anyway, that doesn't affect us in the kitchen because we can cook with it. And I want to show you some really nice rhubarb recipes today. The first one is a rhubarb pie, a very simple one-crust rhubarb pie. And from time to time in this series, I thought it would be quite nice to show some basics for the benefit of younger people. So I want to show you how to make simple short crust pastry. You start off with 6 ounces of flour, and you have a nice roomy bowl, and you have the flour in a sieve. The reason it's in a sieve and the reason you want to sift it is not just to get the lumps out, but one of the most important ingredients in pastry is air. And because that flour's been packed in a bag on the shelf in the supermarket, it needs to get a nice airing so that it makes your finished pastry nice and light. Now the fat I'm going to use for the pastry, I've tried several different ways, several different fats. And really, in the end, it's up to personal taste. But I find the best fat to use is lard and butter, a combination. So for 6 ounces of flour, I've got 1.5 ounces of butter and 1.5 ounces of lard. Where you're likely to go wrong, if you're inexperienced, is you haven't got the patience to let this come really soft. When it comes out of the refrigerator, it's got to be left until it's really sort of room temperature soft, like that, so that you can just make an indentation with your knife. And if you don't have the patience to do that, and I have to confess sometimes I don't, it's much more difficult to rub it in, and then it's much more difficult to roll the pastry out. Let it go in now in little lumps like that. And then the way to combine the flour with the fat is using your hands. Now this is another area where people get a bit nervous. And I've heard people say, oh, I can't make pastry because I'm not light-handed. But being light-handed is just a question of the brain giving signals to the hand to be light. It's quite easy to be light once somebody's shown you how to be light. And, you know, if you're feeling in a bad mood, you might want to go like this, you know. But that isn't how to make pastry. You need to make pastry when you're feeling very relaxed so that you can just let it fall through your fingertips like that. You don't really use your palms at all. And notice again, I'm lifting it up high. That's to get the air in. And what you want to end up with after you've done the rubbing in is a mixture that sort of resembles breadcrumbs. Now once you get to this stage, that's really crumbly now, clean off what's on your hands. And then add some water, cold water. Take it with a tablespoon and just sprinkle it lightly over the dry ingredients. We'll start off with 2 tablespoons. I can't give you the exact amount because different flours absorb different amounts of moisture. Take the knife then and begin to mix it with the knife. And then you'll see it'll become quite claggy. And once it becomes claggy, I don't know whether that's really a word or not, but that's the word I use. Then you can go in with your hands again, still being light, and just bring it together. There we are. And you want to have enough moisture to make a dough that leaves the bowl clean. Now, another place where people go wrong is that they roll the pastry out straight away, and that mustn't happen. You've got to put it in a polythene bag, keep it in the refrigerator, and actually allow it to rest. Now, why should pastry rest? Well, the reason it should rest is that there's an ingredient in the flour called gluten. And gluten, when it comes into contact with water, becomes very, very elastic. So this 20 minutes waiting time keeps the pastry cool, and it gives the gluten time to become elastic. When it becomes elastic, that means you can roll it out easily. If you try to roll it out too soon, you'll find you might have problems. So we'll get rid of that one now and switch to one that's had its little rest. Here it is over here. And then I want to tell you a little bit about rolling pastry out. First of all, you need a well-floured surface. I've got a lovely piece of granite here, but it can be wood, it can be anything. And then you need a proper rolling pin. And a proper rolling pin is one that is straight all the way down. The ones that have ridges in, like this, sometimes are a little bit difficult if you want to roll pastry out into quite a big shape, then you'll find it's hard with those ridges. So the straighter the better. Flour the pin before you start, all round like that. And then place it on the pastry and keep your hands flat at either end of the pin and start to just roll very, very lightly. Going backwards and forwards. Then give the pastry a quarter turn, because what we want today is to have the pastry in a round shape. Give it another quarter turn. If you're in a hurry and you've got all kinds of things on your mind, it's very tempting to sort of go like that or like that. But really, if you can keep going straight, I have to admit I sometimes do that myself because I'm not concentrating. But if you are concentrating, it's best to just keep going in a straight line. Make sure there's some flour underneath always, otherwise it sticks. Now what we want to have today is a piece of pastry that's going to be roughly 12 inches in diameter. This is getting a bit soft under the lights, but we'll persevere with it. Now another quarter turn, and I'm glad we've got a few breakages there, because that's something else I can talk to you about. Need a little bit of flour on here now. Breakages, cracks, no problem. All you've got to learn to do is patchwork. As long as you can do a bit of patchwork, you need never worry. Round again now. Now you'll notice that this has got really sort of very, very, very odd-shaped edges, but that is actually what we want for this recipe. That's just about big enough now. We want the edges nice and raggedy, because this pie we're making looks more attractive if the edges are raggedy. What we're going to now do is put rhubarb in there, but before we put the rhubarb in, we're going to just roll it round the pin. This is how you always transfer pastry if you want to make a quiche or anything to a tin. And then just, this one's going onto a flat baking sheet. Don't worry if it flops over the edges, because it's actually supposed to. And again, if you get any little holes, just all you do is just put them together again. Now this is going to have rhubarb in it, and before I put the rhubarb in, it's very important when you're making pastry in anything, one of the hazards is getting the underneath bit crisp. Well, the way we're going to get this crisp is I'm going to give it a coating, first of all, with egg yolk. I've got a small egg that's been separated here, and what I'm going to do is just paint the base of the pastry with the egg yolk, and this is going to provide a sort of waterproof coating for it whilst the fruit is cooking. And then another ingredient. This is fine semolina. Now all the summer fruits have got lots of juice, so if you're making pies, if you put, this is a little tip, if you put 2 tablespoons of fine semolina over the base, then what happens is that will soak up the juice. You won't notice it in the pie, you won't even know it's there, but it'll just soak up the juice. Spread it out a little bit to give you a base. Now for the rhubarb, 1.5 pounds I've got here, and I've already put the sugar in. I've put 3 ounces of sugar. If you've got rhubarb in your garden, you'll find as the season goes on it gets more and more tart. You need more and more sugar as the season goes on, but this is nice and young. Just pile it up in the middle. Oh my goodness, you're thinking, whatever is she going to make out of that? Well, hang on. Get the last of the sugar in. And then, all I'm going to do now is simply fold the edges back over. And I'm delighted to tell you that the more ragged the edges look, the nicer the finished pie. It's quite extraordinary, this one. Minimum skill. The only thing you do have to be a little bit careful of is if you find you've got, as I hope I will have to show you, if you find you've got any holes, then take a piece of pastry like that and patch it. I've got a hole this side, so I'm going to patch that as well. Now this just goes into the oven, but first of all, I'm going to use the egg white and another brush and give it a glaze. This just helps to make it look quite nice. Paint it all round. Now, of course, you don't have to be tied to rhubarb. Later on, you can make it with gooseberries, black currants, all different kinds of fruits are suitable for this lovely one-crust easy pie. Now, I've just noticed there I've got one little hole. I'm going to take a piece of pastry and just patch that up. There's another one there, so we'll just patch that one up as well. And then the final ingredient needs a nice little crunchy topping. So here I've got some crushed Demerara sugar cubes, and I'm just going to pat that round on the top to cling to the egg white to give it a nice crusty topping. Now this goes into a hot oven, gas mark 6 or the equivalent, and it'll take about 30 to 35 minutes for the rhubarb and pastry to both be cooked.
Remember, you can make one-crust pies using other fruits. Here I've used dark, luscious black currants. Or you might like to try this wonderful combination of fresh apricots and flaked almonds. And now for our grand finale. First line a quiche tin with short crust pastry, then prick the base and brush with egg yolk. Now take the zest and squeeze the juice of 3 large oranges, and then sprinkle the zest and 3 ounces of caster sugar over 1½ pounds of chopped rhubarb. Pop it into a preheated oven, gas mark 5, with the pastry case on the shelf above. They should take about 25 minutes to cook. Meanwhile, mix a little of the orange juice into 3 tablespoons of corn flour. Heat the remaining juice, then whisk in the corn flour mixture until it thickens. Now take 3 egg yolks and stir these in along with the strained juice from the cooked rhubarb before returning it all to the heat. Then combine this mixture with the rhubarb chunks and spread it evenly into the pastry case. Now we're going to make some meringue by whisking egg whites, any amount from 3 to 6 depending on how high you like to have the meringue. When it reaches the soft peak stage, add 2 ounces of caster sugar per egg white and whisk again. Heap the meringue onto the pie and bake at gas mark 5 for about 20 to 25 minutes until golden brown. And this is called Pilot High Orange and Rhubarb Meringue Pie.
So there we are, that's our prelude to summer, but I hope you're going to come back next week when we'll be looking at green leaves, herbs and gooseberries, so I look forward to seeing you then.